The text arrived at 3:47 p.m. on a Tuesday that had already gone sideways. Mom wants you over for dinner tonight. Don't be late. Isabelle. I stared at my phone, sitting in my glass-walled office at Henderson and Associates Architecture, watching the cursor blink on my computer screen, where I'd been designing what would become another soulless suburban McMansion. Isabelle's mother, Claudine Benoit, had never once in our 7-year marriage referred to herself as my mom. The woman barely tolerated my existence, treating me like discount furniture that came with the house. Something was off. Before we dive deeper into this story, I have one small request. Please subscribe, drop a like, comment, and hit that hype button to boost this channel so more people can discover these incredible Reddit stories. I'd been teaching myself French for the past 2 years, using an app during my lunch breaks and listening to podcasts during my commute. Isabelle didn't know. Neither did her pretentious mother, who loved dropping French phrases into conversations like breadcrumbs of superiority, assuming I was too stupid to understand. The irony was delicious. While they thought I was just another dumb American husband, I'd been quietly absorbing every whispered conversation, every snide comment they thought was safely hidden behind their linguistic curtain. My phone buzzed again. This time it was my business partner, Tom Henderson. Daniel, can you handle the Riverside project meeting tomorrow? I've got a family emergency. Sure thing, I texted back, then returned to staring at Isabelle's message. At 39, I'd built a decent life. Not spectacular, but solid. I designed homes for people who had more money than taste, drove a reliable Honda Civic, and came home every night to a wife who increasingly felt like a stranger sharing my bed. Our modern minimalist house in Brookfield Heights was all white walls and sharp angles, looking more like a museum than a home. Isabelle had insisted on the design, claiming it was sophisticated. I'd built it to her specifications, even though it felt cold and unwelcoming. The commute home took 45 minutes through typical suburban traffic. I used the time to practice French pronunciation, though today my mind kept wandering to Isabelle's unusual dinner invitation. In 7 years of marriage, Claudine had maybe invited me to dinner a dozen times, and each occasion had been torture. I pulled into our driveway at 6:15 p.m. Isabelle's silver BMW wasn't there, which was strange since she'd insisted on dinner at her mother's. I walked into our sterile living room and called out, but got no response. A note on the kitchen counter explained everything. Had to run errands. Meet me at Mom's at 7. Address is 847 Elm Street, you know the way. 45 minutes to Passel. I grabbed a beer from the refrigerator and sat in my home office, looking over the architectural plans spread across my drafting table. The Riverside project was a $2.3 million custom home for a tech executive who wanted something that screams success. I'd given him exactly that, a monument to ego disguised as residential architecture. My phone rang. It was my friend Mike from the boxing gym where I'd been training for the past year. Hey Daniel, you coming in tonight? Got some new heavy bags installed. Can't make it. Command performance at the mother-in-law's house. Mike laughed. Good luck, brother. Remember what I taught you about keeping your guard up. I don't think boxing techniques work at dinner parties. You'd be surprised. At 6:45, I changed into khakis and a button-down shirt, the uniform Claudine expected from her daughter's husband. I drove across town to Elm Street, where Claudine lived in a sprawling Tudor-style house that screamed old money. The circular driveway could accommodate 6 cars easily. Tonight, there were only 2. Isabelle's BMW and a sleek black Porsche I didn't recognize. I rang the doorbell and waited. Through the frosted glass, I could see movement and hear voices speaking in rapid French. Isabelle opened the door wearing a red dress I'd never seen before. She looked nervous. Daniel, you made it. Come in, come in. The house smelled like expensive perfume and roasted chicken. Classical music played softly from hidden speakers. Claudine emerged from the living room wearing pearls and a condescending smile. Daniel. How wonderful. We have a guest tonight I'm sure you'll find interesting. She led us into the dining room, where a man in his early 40s sat at the mahogany table, holding a glass of red wine. He was handsome in that European way, perfectly styled dark hair, expensive clothes, confident posture. He stood when we entered. Daniel, I'd like you to meet Étienne Laurent. He's visiting from Paris on business. Étienne extended his hand with a smile that didn't reach his eyes. Pleasure to meet you, Daniel. Isabelle has told me so much about you. All good things, I hope, I replied, shaking his hand and noting his firm grip. But of course, he said with a slight accent. I understand you're an architect. How fascinating. We sat down to dinner. Claudine had prepared coq au vin, beef bourguignon, and fresh bread. The conversation started in English, with Étienne explaining that he was in town exploring investment opportunities in American real estate. He was charming, well-traveled, and seemed to know an awful lot about our local market for someone who'd just arrived. About halfway through the main course, Claudine and Isabelle began speaking in French. At first, it was innocent. Comments about the food, the wine, the weather. But then their conversation took an interesting turn. Il est plus beau que je pensais, Isabelle said quietly, glancing at Étienne. He's more handsome than I thought. Claudine smiled. Et Daniel ne comprend rien, comme d'habitude. And Daniel understands nothing, as usual. Étienne chuckled. Votre gendre semble être un homme simple, pas de sophistication européenne. Your son-in-law seems to be a simple man, no European sophistication. C'est exactement le problème, Isabelle replied. Il ne comprend pas ce dont une femme a besoin. That's exactly the problem. He doesn't understand what a woman needs. I continued eating, maintaining a neutral expression while my pressure spiked. They were discussing me like I was a piece of furniture, and from the looks being exchanged between Isabelle and Étienne, this dinner was about much more than business networking. Claudine leaned toward Étienne conspiratorially. Ma fille mérite mieux qu'un homme qui construit des maisons pour les nouveaux riches. My daughter deserves better than a man who builds houses for the nouveaux riches. Peut-être qu'elle trouvera ce qu'elle cherche, Étienne said, looking directly at Isabelle. Perhaps she'll find what she's looking for. That's when I decided to drop my bomb. Excusez-moi, I said in perfect French, mais je pense qu'il y a une malentendu ici. Excuse-me, but I think there's a misunderstanding here. The silence that followed was magnificent. Claudine's fork stopped halfway to her mouth. Isabelle went pale. Étienne's confident smile faltered. Vous parlez français? Claudine whispered. Oui, depuis 2 ans maintenant. J'ai entendu chaque mot que vous avez dit ce soir. Yes, for 2 years now. I've heard every word you've said tonight. I stood up slowly, placing my napkin on the table. Thank you for the lovely dinner, Claudine. And Étienne, I hope your business ventures in America prove educational. I walked out of that house with my head high, but inside, I was falling apart. The drive home was a blur of anger, humiliation, and a growing certainty that my marriage was over. I didn't sleep that night. Instead, I sat in my home office, staring at architectural drawings while my mind replayed every detail of the dinner. Isabelle had come home around midnight, slipping into bed without a word. When I'd tried to talk to her, she'd pretended to be asleep. The next morning, she left for work before I was out of the shower. No goodbye, no explanation, no acknowledgement of what had happened. Just a coffee mug in the sink and the lingering scent of her perfume. I called in sick to work and spent the day doing something I'd never imagined I'd do, investigating my own wife. Isabelle worked as a marketing manager at Brennan & Associates, a mid-sized advertising agency downtown. She made good money, had her own office, and frequently traveled for client meetings, or so she'd told me. Now I wondered how much of what I thought I knew about my wife was actually true. I started with her laptop, She'd left it on the kitchen counter, probably in her rush to avoid me. Her password was our wedding anniversary. Either she was sentimental or uncreative, probably the latter. Her email revealed nothing immediately suspicious, but her browser history was more interesting. Multiple searches for Étienne Laurent Paris, French real estate investment, and divorce lawyers in Connecticut. That last one hit like a punch to the gut. I dug deeper into her computer files and found a folder labeled Personal that contained photos from her recent business trips. Except these weren't business photos. They were pictures of Isabelle in restaurants, at museums, walking through parks, all with Étienne Laurent. The timestamps showed these photos were taken over the past 3 months, during what she'd told me were solo business trips to Boston and New York. My hands were shaking as I scrolled through dozens of images. Isabelle laughing at something Étienne was saying. Étienne's hand on her back as they walked down a city street. The two of them sharing dessert at an expensive restaurant. And then I found the photos that confirmed what I already knew in my gut. Isabelle and Étienne kissing outside a hotel, his hands tangled in her hair, her arms wrapped around his neck. I closed the laptop and walked to the bathroom, where I threw up everything I'd eaten in the past 24 hours. After I'd composed myself, I returned to my investigation. If Isabelle was having an affair, I needed to know everything. How long had it been going on? How serious was it? And what was I going to do about it? I checked our joint bank account and found several charges I didn't recognize. Expensive restaurants in Boston and New York on dates when Isabelle was supposedly traveling alone. Hotel charges that didn't match the business hotels her company usually booked. A $300 charge at Victoria's Secret from last month. I'd never seen any new lingerie. My phone rang. It was Tom from work. "Daniel, are you okay? You sounded rough this morning." "Just a stomach bug," I lied. "I should be in tomorrow." "No rush. The Riverside client moved the meeting to Friday anyway. Take care of yourself." After hanging up, I realized I needed to be smarter about this. If I was going to confront Isabelle, I needed more than circumstantial evidence. I needed proof that couldn't be explained away. I drove to Best Buy and purchased a small digital camera with a telephoto lens. The salesperson probably thought I was planning to take wildlife photos. In a way, I was. That evening, Isabelle came home at her usual time, acting like nothing had happened. She kissed my cheek and asked about my day as if we hadn't just discovered that we could both speak French. "How was work?" I asked. "Busy. We're pitching a new client next week. Big European company looking to expand into the American market." "Sounds interesting. Anyone I'd know?" She shrugged. "Laurent Industries. They're based in Paris." The casualness with which she lied was almost impressive. I nodded and returned to reading the newspaper, while inside I was screaming. Over the next few days, I established a routine. I'd go to work, handle my responsibilities, then spend my free time gathering evidence. I followed Isabelle to lunch meetings that weren't with clients. I photographed her entering hotels with Étienne. I documented their affair with the methodical precision I usually reserved for architectural blueprints. The hardest part wasn't the surveillance or the lies. It was pretending everything was normal when Isabelle came home each night. She'd tell me about her day, ask about mine, and we'd eat dinner together like we had for 7 years. Except now I knew she was thinking about another man. On Thursday night, she announced she had another business trip. "Boston again," she said, not meeting my eyes. "Leaving Friday morning, back Sunday night." "Which hotel?" "The usual, the Marriott downtown." I nodded and made a mental note to call the Marriott and confirm she wasn't registered there. Friday morning, I watched her pack. She included the lingerie from Victoria's Secret, along with a black dress I'd never seen before. She kissed me goodbye and told me she loved me. I told her I loved her too, and for the first time in our marriage, it felt like a lie. After she left, I called the Marriott. No reservation under Isabelle Moore or Isabelle Benoit, her maiden name. I tried 3 other hotels in Boston with the same result. Then I called Laurent Industries in Paris. After being transferred twice, I reached someone who spoke English. "I'm trying to reach Étienne Laurent," I said. "I understand he's in the United States on business." "Monsieur Laurent is on personal leave this month," the woman replied. "He won't be back in the office until November." Personal leave, not business. Personal. I hung up and sat in my kitchen, staring at the coffee mug Isabelle had left in the sink. For 7 years, I'd trusted this woman completely. I'd built our house to her specifications, structured my career around her needs, and never once questioned her loyalty. I'd been an idiot, but I wasn't going to be a victim. I spent Friday afternoon at Mike's boxing gym, working out my frustrations on the heavy bag. Mike was a former Marine who'd opened the gym after retiring from 20 years of service. He was one of the few people I trusted completely, and right now I needed someone to talk to. "You look like hell," he said after I'd spent 30 minutes punching leather. "Feel like it too. Want to talk about it?" I told him everything. The dinner at Claudine's, the investigation, the photos, the lies. Mike listened without judgment, occasionally nodding or asking clarifying questions. "What are you going to do?" he asked when I finished. "I don't know. Part of me wants to confront her tonight. Part of me wants to hire a divorce lawyer and disappear." "What does your gut tell you?" "That my marriage is over, and I need to figure out how to protect myself." Mike handed me a towel. "You know what your problem is, Daniel? You're too nice. You built that woman a dream house, supported her career, and trusted her completely, and she's been lying to your face for months. So what do you suggest? Stop being nice. You've got evidence of her affair. You've got proof she's been lying about business trips. Use it." "I'm not looking for revenge, Mike. I just want out." He gave me a look I'd seen before, usually right before he knocked someone on their ass during sparring. Sometimes revenge and justice are the same thing. I went home and spent the weekend planning my next move. Isabelle had texted a few times from her business trip, sending photos of Boston landmarks and complaining about boring client meetings. Each message was another lie, another insult to my intelligence. On Sunday night, she came home with gifts, a Red Sox t-shirt and some chocolate from a shop in the North End. Props for her performance. "How was the trip?" I asked. "Productive. I think we're going to land the Laurent Industries account." "That's great, honey. I'm proud of you." She smiled and kissed me, and I tasted another man on her lips. Monday morning, I made a decision. Instead of going to work, I drove to downtown Hartford and hired a private investigator named Sarah Chen. She was recommended by a lawyer friend and specialized in matrimonial cases. "I need documentation of my wife's affair," I told her, sliding a folder across her desk. "Photos, hotel records, anything that would hold up in court." Sarah reviewed my evidence with professional detachment. "You've done good work here, but I can get you better. Give me 2 weeks." "How much?" $3,000 plus expenses." I wrote her a check from my personal account, the one Isabelle didn't have access to. 2 weeks later, Sarah delivered a report that was both comprehensive and devastating. Isabelle and Étienne had been meeting regularly for 4 months, not 3. They'd spent weekends together in New York, Boston, and Philadelphia. Hotel records, restaurant receipts, even photos of them checking into a bed and breakfast in Vermont. But the most damaging evidence was a recording Sarah had made of Isabelle talking to her friend Jennifer over lunch. "I don't love Daniel anymore," Isabelle's voice said through Sarah's small speaker. "I haven't for years. He's boring, predictable, and completely clueless about what I need." "So why don't you just divorce him?" Jennifer asked. "Because Étienne isn't ready to leave his wife yet. And Daniel built our house, so legally I'm entitled to half of everything. I need to be smart about this." "You're playing with fire, Is." "I'm playing to win." I listened to the recording 3 times, each replay driving the knife deeper. Sarah watched me with professional sympathy. "I'm sorry," she said. "This is never easy to hear." What happens now? That depends on what you want. Divorce proceedings, separation agreement, or what? Some people prefer to handle things privately first. I took the report home and locked it in my office safe. That night, Isabelle announced another business trip. New York this time, she said. Laurent Industries wants to see our full presentation. When? Thursday through Sunday. Big weekend could make or break the deal. I nodded and pretended to care about her fictional business success. Thursday morning, I called in sick again and followed Isabelle to the train station. She wasn't going to New York for business. She was meeting Étienne for a romantic weekend getaway. But this time, I had a different plan. Instead of surveillance, I drove to the office of Morrison, Klein & Associates, the law firm Sarah had recommended. I met with David Morrison, a partner who specialized in divorce cases. I want to file for divorce, I told him, and I want to do it right. David reviewed Sarah's report and whistled softly. This is very thorough. Connecticut is a no-fault state, but adultery can still impact property division and alimony. What are my options? We file the papers and have her served, or we try to negotiate a settlement first. I want her served, at work, in front of her colleagues. David raised an eyebrow. That's unusual, but it's your call. She's been lying to me for months. She can handle a little embarrassment. Friday afternoon, while Isabelle was supposedly in New York closing the Laurent Industries deal, a process server walked into Brennan & Associates and asked for Isabelle Moore. Her assistant directed him to the conference room, where Isabelle was meeting with her team about an actual client presentation. According to my friend Tom, who heard about it from his wife who worked in the building, Isabelle turned white when she was handed the divorce papers. She tried to play it off as a mistake, but the damage was done. By the end of the day, everyone in her office knew that Isabelle Moore's husband was divorcing her for adultery. She called me 17 times that afternoon. I didn't answer. She came home Sunday night in a fury. "How dare you embarrass me like that?" she screamed as soon as she walked through the door. "Serving me divorce papers at work, in front of my colleagues? How dare you have an affair with Étienne Laurent and lie to me for 4 months?" The fight that followed was epic. 7 years of marriage ended in 45 minutes of screaming, accusations, and revelations. She called me boring and predictable. I called her a cheating liar. She threw a wine glass at the wall. I calmly swept up the pieces. "I want you out of this house," she finally said. "Actually, this is my house. I designed it, I built it, and my name is on the deed. You're welcome to stay in the guest room until you find somewhere else to live. We'll see about that." Yes, we will. The next few weeks were a masterclass in how quickly a life can unravel. Isabelle hired her own lawyer and filed a countersuit, claiming I had been emotionally abusive and demanding half of everything, including my architecture firm. Our mutual friends were forced to choose sides. Most of them chose Isabelle. Mike remained loyal, but Tom and his wife Jennifer started declining my invitations to dinner. My neighbor Steve stopped waving when he saw me in the yard. Even my own sister suggested I should try marriage counseling instead of throwing away 7 years. The worst part was how Isabelle played the victim. She told everyone who would listen that I had blindsided her with divorce papers, that I was having a midlife crisis, that I was being vindictive and cruel. She never mentioned Étienne, but I had evidence, and evidence doesn't lie. 3 weeks after serving the papers, I was having a beer at Murphy's Pub when Tom and Jennifer walked in with Isabelle and 2 other couples I'd considered friends. They saw me sitting at the bar and chose a table on the opposite side of the restaurant. I could hear Isabelle's voice carrying across the room, telling everyone how difficult I was being, how I was trying to take everything she'd worked for, how she just wanted to move on with her life. Jennifer looked over at me with a mixture of pity and disapproval. Tom avoided eye contact entirely. I finished my beer and walked over to their table. "Hi, everyone," I said pleasantly. "Mind if I join you?" The silence was uncomfortable. Isabelle glared at me with pure hatred. "Actually, Daniel, we're having a private conversation," Tom said. About me, I assume. Daniel, please, Jennifer said. This is awkward enough. You're right, it is awkward, especially since none of you have asked to hear my side of the story. There are two sides to every story, said Mark, another architect from my firm who'd been friends with both of us. You're absolutely right, Mark. Isabelle's side is that I'm a controlling husband who blindsided her with divorce papers. My side is that she's been having an affair with a married man from Paris for the past 4 months. I pulled out my phone and showed them one of Sarah's photos, Isabelle and Étienne kissing outside a hotel in Boston. She told you she was on business trips. She was actually spending weekends with her lover while lying to my face every single day. The table went silent. Isabelle's face turned red. That's private, she hissed. Privacy ended when you decided to cheat on your husband. I showed them another photo, then another. The evidence was overwhelming and undeniable. So yes, there are two sides to this story. There's the side where I'm the bad guy for filing for divorce, and there's the side where I'm the victim of adultery who's been lied to for months by a woman I trusted completely. I put my phone away and looked around the table. Choose whatever side makes you comfortable, but don't pretend you didn't know the truth. I walked out of Murphy's pub and never went back. The next day, Jennifer called to apologize. I had no idea, she said. Isabelle never mentioned another man. She made it sound like you just snapped one day. She's very good at managing her image. I feel terrible. We all do. Don't feel terrible. Just remember that there's usually more to the story than what people tell you. But the damage was done. My social circle was destroyed, my reputation was damaged, and I was facing a bitter divorce battle with a woman who seemed determined to take everything I'd built. That's when I decided to stop playing defense and start playing offense. I called Sarah Chen and asked her to expand her investigation. I want to know everything about Étienne Laurent, I told her. His business, his marriage, his finances, his reputation, everything. That's going to be expensive. I don't care. 2 weeks later, Sarah delivered another report. Étienne Laurent was married to a wealthy French socialite named Margot Laurent. They had 2 teenage children and lived in a mansion in the 16th arrondissement of Paris. Étienne's business was successful but heavily leveraged, and he had a reputation for pursuing married women during his business travels. More importantly, Margot Laurent was the daughter of a prominent French businessman who had invested heavily in Étienne's company. If she divorced him, Étienne would likely lose everything. Interesting, I said, reviewing the report. What would happen if Margot found out about her husband's affair? Sarah smiled. That would be unfortunate for Monsieur Laurent. Hypothetically, how would someone contact Margot Laurent? Hypothetically, her contact information is on page 12 of the report. That night I sat in my office and composed an email in French to Margot Laurent. I included photos of her husband with my wife, hotel receipts from their romantic getaways, and a detailed timeline of their affair. I explained that I was not seeking revenge, but felt she deserved to know the truth about her husband's activities in America. I sent the email at 2 a.m., when it would be 8 a.m. in Paris. Margot Laurent replied within an hour. Monsieur Moore, thank you for this information. I have suspected my husband of infidelity for some time but lacked proof. Your evidence is very helpful. I will be traveling to America next week to see this situation for myself. Perhaps we could meet for coffee? I wrote back immediately. I would be happy to meet with you, Madame Laurent. I believe we have much to discuss. Margot Laurent arrived in Hartford on a Tuesday morning in late October. I met her at the Marriott downtown, the same hotel where Isabelle had claimed to be staying during her fictional business trips. Margot was elegant in that effortless way that only French women seem to master. She was probably in her early 40s, with short blonde hair and the kind of understated jewelry that costs more than most people's cars. She ordered coffee in perfect English and got straight to business. Your wife is very beautiful, she said, reviewing the photos on her tablet. Étienne has always preferred brunettes. This has happened before? Oh yes, but never with a married woman, and never for so long. Usually his affairs last a few weeks at most. I'm sorry you have to deal with this. She waved dismissively. I stopped loving my husband years ago, Monsieur Moore, but I will not be humiliated publicly by his American mistress. What do you plan to do? First, I will confront them together. Then I will return to Paris and file for divorce. Étienne will lose his business, his reputation, and most of his assets. That seems fair. What about you? What do you want from this situation? I thought about it for a moment. I want my life back. I want Isabelle to understand that there are consequences for what she's done, and I want to move forward without looking back. Then perhaps we can help each other. Margot had done her homework. She knew that Isabelle and Étienne were planning to spend the weekend at a boutique hotel in the Berkshires. She had their reservation details, their room number, and their planned activities. I propose we surprise them together, she said. You confront your wife, I confront my husband, and we end this affair publicly and permanently. What if they deny everything? Margot smiled coldly. They cannot deny what we can prove. Saturday morning, I drove to the Berkshires with Margot following in her rental car. The hotel was a converted Victorian mansion surrounded by fall foliage. It was the kind of romantic getaway that Isabelle had never suggested for us. We checked in separately and waited in the lobby until we saw Isabelle and Étienne come downstairs for brunch. They were holding hands and laughing about something. Isabelle was wearing the black dress from her suitcase, and Étienne was in casual clothes that probably cost more than my monthly mortgage payment. They looked happy together. It was nauseating. Margot and I approached their table in the hotel restaurant. The look of shock on Étienne's face when he saw his wife was priceless. Isabelle went pale and immediately dropped Étienne's hand. Bonjour, mon cher mari, Margot said sweetly. Hello, my dear husband. Margot, I can explain. I'm sure you can. But first, let me introduce you to Daniel Moore, the husband of your mistress. The other diners in the restaurant were starting to stare. Isabelle looked like she wanted to disappear. Perhaps we should take this conversation somewhere private, I suggested. Non, Margot said firmly. I think this is the perfect place for honesty. What followed was the most brutal 15 minutes of my life. Margot systematically destroyed Étienne in French, English, and what I think was Italian. She detailed his infidelities, his lies, and his failures as a husband and father. She told him that she was divorcing him, taking half of everything, and ensuring that his business partners in Paris knew exactly why their marriage had ended. Étienne tried to defend himself, but Margot had evidence of everything. Photos, receipts, even recordings of phone calls between him and Isabelle. Isabelle, meanwhile, sat in stunned silence as her fairy tale romance crumbled in real time. And you, Margot said, turning to my wife, you are pathetic. You threw away a marriage to a good man for what? A few weekends with my lying husband? Did you really think he would leave me for you? We love each other, Isabelle stammered. Margot laughed. He told you he loved you? The same thing he told his last 3 mistresses? Isabelle looked at Étienne, who couldn't meet her eyes. It's true, isn't it? She whispered. I'm just another affair to you. Isabelle, it's not like that. Yes, it is exactly like that, Margot interrupted. You are nothing special, ma chérie. Just another American woman who fell for my husband's lies. By this point, the entire restaurant was watching our drama unfold. Other guests were taking photos with their phones. The hotel manager was hovering nearby, unsure whether to intervene. I stood up and looked down at Isabelle. 7 years, I said quietly. 7 years of marriage, and you threw it away for this. Daniel, please. No, we're done. The divorce papers are already filed, the evidence is documented, and your lover's wife is going to destroy him in French court. You've lost everything for a man who was using you. I turned to Margot. Thank you for your help with this. I hope your divorce proceedings go smoothly." "They will," she said confidently. "Au revoir, Étienne. Enjoy your last few months of financial security." I walked out of that hotel restaurant with my head high, leaving behind the wreckage of 2 marriages and 1 very public humiliation. The drive home took 2 hours, and I spent it thinking about what came next. The divorce would be finalized within a few months. Isabelle would get some money from the settlement, but not nearly what she'd hoped for. Étienne would return to Paris to face his own legal battles, and I would rebuild my life from scratch. When I got home, I poured myself a glass of whiskey and sat in my office, looking at the architectural drawings scattered across my desk. Tomorrow, I would start designing something new, not a house for someone else, but a future for myself. My phone buzzed with a text message. It was from Mike at the boxing gym. "How did it go?" I typed back. "It's over, all of it." "Good. Want to grab a beer tonight and talk about it?" "Yeah, I'd like that." I finished my whiskey and looked around the house that Isabelle and I had shared for 7 years. It felt different now, not cold and sterile, but empty and full of possibilities. Tomorrow I would call a real estate agent and put it on the market. It was time to build something new, somewhere else, with someone who deserved my trust. But tonight, I was going to have a beer with a friend and celebrate the end of the worst chapter of my life. 6 months later, I received a wedding invitation in the mail. Tom and Jennifer were renewing their vows for their 10th anniversary, and they wanted me to be there. The invitation included a handwritten note from Jennifer. "We're sorry we doubted you. We hope you can forgive us and join us for our celebration." I RSVP'd yes and bought them a beautiful set of crystal wine glasses. The party was held in Tom's backyard on a perfect spring evening. Most of our old crowd was there, along with some new faces I didn't recognize. Everyone was friendly and apologetic, and several people mentioned how good I looked. I'd been working out regularly at Mike's gym, eating better, and sleeping through the night for the first time in years. I'd also started dating a woman named Lisa, who worked at the coffee shop near my new apartment. She was kind, honest, and refreshingly straightforward about what she wanted from life. Halfway through the party, Tom pulled me aside. "I heard Isabelle moved to California," he said. "Yeah, she got a job with an agency in Los Angeles. Fresh start, I guess. And Étienne lost everything in the divorce. Last I heard, he was working for someone else's company and living in a studio apartment." Tom shook his head. "Hard to believe it all fell apart so quickly." "It was falling apart for months," I said. "I just didn't see it until it was too late." "Any regrets?" I thought about it for a moment, watching the other guests laughing and enjoying themselves. "No," I said finally. "No regrets at all." Later that evening, as I was getting ready to leave, Jennifer approached me with tears in her eyes. "Daniel, I need to apologize again. We should have supported you from the beginning." "It's okay, Jen. You didn't know the whole story. But we should have trusted you. You were our friend, and we abandoned you when you needed us most. People make mistakes. What matters is that we're here now." She hugged me tightly. "Thank you for forgiving us, and thank you for showing us what real integrity looks like." I drove home that night feeling lighter than I had in years. The divorce was final, my new business was thriving, and I had friends who respected me again. More importantly, I had learned something valuable about myself. I was stronger than I'd ever imagined, and I deserved better than what I'd settled for. As I pulled into the parking lot of my apartment complex, my phone rang. It was Lisa. "How was the party?" she asked. "Good, really good. Want to come over and hear about it?" "I'll be there in 20 minutes. I smiled and headed upstairs to my apartment. It was small, simple, and nothing like the designer showcase I'd shared with Isabelle. But it was mine, and it was honest, and it was exactly what I needed. The next morning, I woke up next to Lisa and realized that for the first time in years, I was genuinely happy. Not just content or satisfied, but truly happy. I made coffee and sat on my balcony, watching the sun rise over the city. Somewhere out there, Isabelle was starting her new life in California. Somewhere else, Étienne was dealing with the consequences of his choices. But I was here, in this moment, with a woman who loved me for who I was, not who she wanted me to become. I raised my coffee mug in a silent toast to new beginnings, second chances, and the courage to demand better from life.